about things that you can do. You think nobody else can do it half as good as you. They tell me that you shake that.
The X-T50 is pretty much a smaller version of the X-T5 with a few features missing. There's no weather sealing, it uses a smaller battery and only uses one memory card. So the natural question is, why would you get the X-T50 over, say, the X-T5 or the XS20? Now, price aside, it really comes down to the size and weight of this camera. It's really impressive how Fujifilm have packed in so many of their high-end features into a camera body this small. And honestly, I had a lot of fun walking around with this camera, especially when it's paired with a small lens like the 27mm f2.8. When I first picked up the X-T50, I was actually pretty surprised at how small and how light it was. I knew it would be smaller than the X-T5, but I didn't quite realize how much smaller and how much lighter it was. Now, there is a trade-off for this. First off, the materials used. So the top plate and the bottom plate are pretty much all plastic. And to be honest, for a camera worth over $1,200 or £1,200, it does feel slightly cheap, which is a bit concerning. But thankfully, Fujifilm have decided to keep the buttons on the back of this camera. There's been a bit of a trend recently with Fuji where they've been removing all the buttons from the back of their camera, but I'm glad to see they're still being kept on the X-T50. They're pretty much all in the same place as you'll find on the X-T5, so there's plenty of space to customize these buttons and set the camera up as you wish. Also, the X-T50 uses Fujifilm's older batteries. For photography, these are actually fine, but if you're going to be recording video throughout the day, you are going to burn through a couple of these. So whenever I go out to shoot with the X-T50 or the X106, I have at least 3 batteries with me just in case. But probably the most impressive feature on this camera is that Fujifilm have managed to get 7 stops of IBIS into this camera. This really does make a big difference if you're shooting at nighttime or recording video at any time of the day. As with all the Fujifilm cameras I've used so far, filming static shots is perfectly fine with IBIS on, but I do find any sort of panning or moving with my feet brings in too much shake and IBIS goes a bit crazy, so I tend to shoot static shots anyway, so it works for me. Overall, I feel like the trade-offs to get this camera body this small aren't so bad. Yes, you are missing a couple of key features, but getting IBIS along with the new 40 megapixel sensor into this camera body, which is so small, is really impressive. However, this camera does not have weather sealing, so it does limit when and where I can shoot with the X-T50. So, my main concern with the X-T50 isn't actually the camera itself, but it's more the price. This comes in new at around $1,100 or £1,100, whereas the X-T5 comes in at around $1,600 or £1,500. Now, for me, there is a £500 difference between what you're getting here and what you're getting on the X-T5. Now, most of that comes down to the weather sealing, the improved battery, and the dual memory card slots. If you're doing professional work with any camera, you're going to always want those features. Also, as the X-T5 has been out for over a year at this point, there's lots of them on the second-hand market. And this brings me on to today's sponsor, MPB. A good way to save money when you're upgrading your camera gear is to sell the cameras and lenses you no longer use. In my case, I try to keep my gear as minimal as possible and often sell the cameras and lenses I no longer use to MPB. As with all the sponsors on this channel, I only work with brands which I personally use, and I probably both made and saved thousands from buying used gear and selling gear to MPB in the past. So if you've been thinking of selling any of your camera gear, I highly recommend you do so on MPB. It's really quick and easy. Just head over to mpb.com, get a quote, and if you're happy with the quote, MPB can arrange for a courier to come to your front door to pick up your gear. Once they received your gear and checked everything over, they will confirm the quote and pay you quickly. In my opinion, it's both easier and safer than selling privately. Also, when it comes to buying gear, MPB is pretty much one of the first places I always check. I brought several lenses which were listed as like new, and when they arrived they pretty much looked like they've never been used, despite costing significantly less. Plus, everything you buy comes with a 6-month warranty, and you buy in the confidence knowing that all the gear has been checked over by experts. So whether you're looking to buy gear or sell gear, make sure you check out MPB, and a massive thanks to them for sponsoring this episode. In terms of image quality for photography, the sensor is identical to the one in the X-T5, and the photos you take with it are pretty much identical to the ones you're taking on your X-T5, which means you're going to be able to capture beautiful photos whether it's daytime or nighttime. When it comes to autofocus, I've been using the latest firmware. I haven't really noticed a difference between the autofocus on the X-T50 and the X-T5, but with that being said, I only shoot with single point autofocus. I don't really track any subjects, nor do I use the continuous that often. So for my needs, it's more than good enough. It's probably worth noting that the X-T50 has a slightly slower burst mode than the X-T5, but unless you're shooting wildlife or doing sports, I don't think you're gonna notice the difference that often. I rarely shoot at that high of a burst mode when I'm doing street photography or traveling, so it's not really something that concerns me. But again, if you're into wildlife photography or you're shooting sports or fast cars, it might be a bigger issue for you. When it comes to video, you can shoot 6K 10-bit footage. I tend to shoot 4K HQ, which does bring in a slight crop. But that aside, the video quality is great, and I can't really tell a difference between the video I shoot here compared to the video I shoot on the X-T5. But as with most things with this camera, the fact that it shoots such high quality in the camera body this small and light is the X-T50's main selling point. So you're pretty much getting all the main features from the X-T5 just in the camera body, which is smaller. So should you get the X-T50? Now this really comes down to what you prioritize as a photographer. If you really want a more minimal, smaller, lighter setup, the X-T50 is a really great option. You're getting most of Fujifilm's flagship features with a few trade-offs, but for the most part, it's a mini version of the X-T5. But yeah, if you have any questions about the X-T50, drop those in the comments below and I will try to get back to you. And a massive thanks for watching this episode and supporting this channel. I'll catch you in the next one.
I'm kidding.